What's up, Dragon Brood? I wanted to give a little bit of a preface to this episode, not because of the content, but because of the actual production of it. I had an issue with my camera trying to connect to our service that we record with, so my video is real choppy in this one, and it's not going to be the most pleasant thing to watch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link down below. If you just want the audio of this, it will take you to the audio episode. I will also make the audio link on YouTube available if you want to just listen to it on YouTube. However, if you do want to follow through, this will still all have the same other stuff going on. Brian's camera worked fine, so there's still that. But at least wanted to let you know what's going on if you're wondering why the episode was the way it was. But I thought the content was still good enough that we still wanted to have it up for you to listen to. So, hope you enjoy the episode just the same. Welcome, friends, to episode 257 of Color Magic or Magic Gaming Podcast, where we talk about all types of issues that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and for 257 episodes, still got my main man, hopefully enjoying some football season. Brian Sionic, how's it going, dude?
Oh, definitely enjoy a football season. I started with, I believe, out of 30 some odd survivor pools. I think I'm down to 4.
Dude, it's been a wild season. I know a survivor pool that had 2,500 people in it. It's already down to like 300 folks.
Yeah,
we're only in week 3. It's crazy.
For about 3 straight weeks, all the favorites took a bath.
Yeah, it's a wild time right now.
Been covering sports and playing video game sports for 20 years. Never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a football fan. So yeah, I got to say, this show's going to be kind of crazy. We've got stuff to cover because there was a big banning announcement for Commannder.
Really? I hadn't heard.
Yeah, exactly. We have some crazy stuff from Twitch. We have some video game stuff to cover. We have some other card game stuff to cover. Man, I'm just looking at this. We have Magic animated stuff to talk about. Like, this is going to be a pretty wild episode. So we're covering a lot of space. Before we get into that, though, don't forget you can go to patreon.com/colormagic. You support the show, get a shout out just like Ria's Last Stand and somebody that just wants to go by Jay. So thank you both for being patrons. Really, really helps a bunch. But all right. Our lead story here, obviously, we might as well just get into it. The Commannder bannings. For those of you who don't know, there were 4 cards that got banned in Commander. People weren't really that concerned, though, except with 2 of them. And it was Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, I should say, is the actual card, and Jeweled Lotus. Those are the 2 that started all the fuss. And there's a lot that goes into this. But they've already put out an FAQ and a bunch of stuff to go with it, so I don't want to rehash that too much. But I do want to just like dispel a couple things and then talk about some things to kind of follow up. The first is that there's rumors going around that like, oh, well, the Commander Advisory Group and the Rules Committee, they probably sold all their stuff beforehand so they could make money. But like, one, I don't know how many of these you think we have. That's the first thing, that we would have made some thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, no. We also, I will tell you, I'm just on the Commander Advisory Group, which is basically advisors to the Rules Committee. We didn't even know about this until somewhere between 36 and 48 hours before it went live anyway. So we didn't even have the announcement in advance to know what their decision was. So we couldn't even have really made a move if we wanted to. But Gavin, I believe, had posted even online that, hey, if you think this is a thing, if there's anybody who's got any stuff that's been sold or anything that you think would have been one of the members, be sure to share it, because they don't want them on the group, because that's not what it's there for.
Yeah, that'd be pretty easy to prove if somebody dumped, let's say, a couple of hundred Jeweled Lotuses.
Exactly.
Real easy to track.
It would have been weird, right? Even if it was just 5 or 10, you could just go through your buy list and see if anybody sold you in bulk.
I've seen what happens in video gaming when that stuff leaks out. Word would have gotten out really quick if somebody's offloading all their stuff.
Oh, sure. So that is a silly thing. It's a non-issue. And some of them have even showed pictures live in front of the post of that day of like, hey, here's all these I still have. Hell, I still have Mana Crypt and I think a Jeweled Lotus sitting in a box over there. So like mine didn't even go anywhere. I haven't even been playing with them though, so whatever. Now, I do think the messaging around it was bad, and I think and he even talked about this already, so I don't want to go too deep, but like there could be better communication of like, hey, we're at least thinking about these cards. We might be doing something with these or whatever. So people aren't making decisions in the like month leading up to it or whatever. And you reduce the amount of fill beds and people aren't buying or even trading a lot of resources to get one of these cards. But part of the problem also is that Wizards has made these cards chase cards in a couple of sets over the last year. And if there's no communication, then as a player or a consumer, you don't have a reason to think anything's happening to these cards, right? Because they're the chase card in Ixalan, they're the chase card in a master set, they're a chase card, right? Like you have to think they're okay. So I get why there people feel blindsided or whatever. So not saying they shouldn't, and I think in some cases their anger is probably justified, realistically. And that's all been talked about, like I said, and talked about the approach being different going forward and all that. So that's been handled. The problem now, though, is the level that some people have taken this to. Right? We have seen literal physical violence and death threats toward members of the rules committee. People sharing their pictures, people doxing them, to the point, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, but some of the members of the CAG and the RC have talked about possibly not even going to Vegas because of the threats. And the ones that are going, they've had discussions about possibly having more security at their meet and greets and such.
Jesus Christ, people. I mean, just first of all, as we say all the time, first of all, be human beings to not even be kind to each other, be human beings to each other. You should not get enough of your worth wrapped up in these pieces of cardboard to where you feel the need to threaten to harm someone. Uh, this should, I feel like this should be just basic humanity, but every week we end up saying some form of this, like don't be a creep, don't harass people. And the thing is, our audience are probably we're preaching to the choir. Our audience are the people that aren't going to be doing that kind of stuff, but still, the fact that anybody feels that's a way to engage in debate in finance. We like the quote, yeah, sure, it could have been explained better, but look, people, especially with how many literal thousands of moving pieces. Yes, mistakes are going to be made. Sometimes people aren't going to communicate. Somebody that majored in communication has been a journalist for 30 years. Communication is one of our biggest problems sometimes. It just things happen. People say one thing and you get something else from it. That's just kind of how human beings are. We like the game telephone. And the irony is that social media has made it worse, not better.
Yeah, and I will say, like, this isn't something that Wizards probably didn't like the decision either, to be honest, because this takes away some of their, I guess we'll call it reprint equity, right? So now some of these big cards they could just throw in there as chase cards are no longer going to be chase cards for them to just stick into products. So this isn't something that was conspired with Wizards or whatever, because I guarantee you, whoever's in charge of making those decisions at Wizards doesn't like having those cards off the table as being chase cards. So there's a lot of different parts here, but threatening Olivia or myself or Shivam or Charlotte or whoever, like hell, especially in the case of people like me and Shivam or whatever, like we're not even the ones who got to make the final decision. We are just advisors on a pile of information, of which I also don't think there's other cards I would have rather had banned before these. I will just say that publicly. I've said it in the group, like there are other cards I'd rather see done before these. So I don't know 100% why that was the decision that was made, but it is what was made. I will say that Josh Lee Kwai also did not agree with this, also a CAG member. He is resigned from being a CAG member because he disagreed with it that strongly. And others of us have had those similar conversations. So you probably will see some changes, probably at least sometime after Vegas with everything going on. So yeah, not everybody's happy with this. So like even attacking those folks isn't going to do you any good.
Yeah, because if we understand, Olivia was against the bans. So
Yeah,
why would you be? She was on your side if you hated the bans.
I agree. I agree. So it's a tough situation because I do get emotions are high and not wrongfully at all. Like I get there's a lot of reasons for people to be mad, but to just want to do harm to people or threaten people, one, it's illegal. Like, you probably, that's the biggest reason. But two,
Too
just,
immoral.
yeah, exactly. We just shouldn't be doing that. That's just not good. So yeah, we gotta cut that out. The other thing I saw, and this really bothered me, and I saw this in 3 or 4 I saw something on Twitter. I saw a couple of things in Facebook groups, but people using images of Sheldon and making memes. I'm saying like, oh, well, he would have frowned upon these people, or he wouldn't have liked this
Yeah.
decision. Like, first off, Sheldon was one of the biggest people to say that fast mana was a big problem in Commander. So if you know anything about him, he's been public and said that before. Secondly, many members in the group, myself included, have all had very close conversations with Sheldon up until the last few days that he had. So that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, to say that they don't know him and wouldn't have known what he liked or would have been frowned upon. And even just using a guy who recently passed to try to make a meme in your point because you're mad, that's just bad form anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Seriously. So yeah, those that's kind of where I stand on the whole thing. I think people took things way into left field that it just didn't need to go. But
That's
also,
become one of the worst parts, of debate and meme culture, where people try to speak for other famous figures. Like, I'm so tired of seeing MLK quoted out of context. It's insane. It's just
oh God, oh man, we could go all day on that.
right.
But yeah, I just want to say, like, I agree that the RC handled this poorly. They have even said they handled it poorly, could have been handled better. Don't have a problem with people having that opinion at all. I just think how people reacted to that opinion and their actions were very problematic. And in some level, even disappointing, Because, like, you like to think that some communities are better, but hey, people are still people at the end of the day. There was no reason for people to act like that. But just want to at least put that out there. That's kind of where I stand on it. Well, we'll see what happens in the future. There's already been discussions of how communication could go forward, how to work with the watch list of cards that are being considered. Even talk about, like, are you reaching the point that some things need to be unbanned? I don't know, right? So we'll see where things go from here. Before we get into the soapbox stuff, though, I do want to give a little promo here for one of our members, Brishan, who's been supporting the show forever, since nearly the
And we
beginning.
appreciate it.
Yeah, he's got a little production company called the Passage Theater Company in Trenton, New Jersey. So if you're ever in the area, you should go check them out. But they do have some stuff coming up. A play that runs from October 4th to October 20th at the Mill Hill Playhouse. So you should go check them out in Trenton. It says, in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month, we present Alma by Benjamin Benny, and directed by A.Z. Espinoza. Set in the tumultuous fall of 2016, Alma is the touching mother-daughter story of heritage, healing, and hope. So yeah, you should check that out. You can go to our.show/Alma or passagetheater.org. So yeah, and if you want to get tickets, you can just contact ticketing at passagetheater.org. So check them out. Got to support the people that support us every once in a while.
Definitely. And by the way, as a local actor, if you're not in the New Jersey area, I promise you probably have some kind of community theater really close to you. Please support them also. Help like everybody else. Times are hard. Everybody is out here trying to struggle to make ends meet. Theaters are no different. So definitely help them out. Go see those shows. Support your local art scene if you can afford to do so.
Dude, that's a good call out, because I found this little playhouse that's in Olympia, I believe it was. And I mean, I'm talking little. You come in and they've got a stage and they're seating around there for maybe, like, I don't even know if it seats more than 40 people. Like, but they do shows all year. So, they always have something, rotating shows a couple times a year. So I'm sure that exists in a lot of places. And
And a
it's
lot of
cheap
times,
entertainment. It's a good date
definitely.
night,
And in addition to that, a lot of times these theaters, they host your town because obviously unless your theater is really successful, you're not running a play every night. Even a lot of theaters on Broadway don't have a show every night. So they're hosting things like town halls, candidate forums, other meetings for your local Lions Club and community organizations. They do things. So yes, please support your local theaters and your local entities that do that kind of stuff.
Well, all right, let's get into the soapbox because we have a couple of things to talk about. This one, this is just more like, I don't know how to put this nicely, just more kick nonsense. It's sort of, I mean, I
You
feel like
can't
every
really
time I
put it
mention,
nicely if it ain't nice.
yeah, like like when I first heard about Kick, I genuinely was like, okay, cool. This maybe potentially could be a competitor. But it just feels like every day that goes by, I find out something else. And I'm like, yeah, still don't want to stream there. So the latest thing is we had TwitchCon just pass. And I'm following a couple people on Twitch just to kind of see what's going on and, see if there's something talked about or whatever. And I'm watching, and this apparently happened a couple times, but one of the people I was looking at his stuff, one of these kick streamers just comes in while he's live streaming. Like,
Yeah.
and not even just like walk by, like had to come in a physical door to come inside and get on this dude's stream. And he's like, bro, what is even like, and the
oh, you
dude,
streaming? Yes, that's why the door was closed, you
yeah.
idiot.
And this is at the show, and the dude thinks it's funny or whatever. And then he tries to talk to him about it later, and the dude still tries to act like nothing's wrong. And he's got this obnoxious shirt on and a weird cape or whatever, trying to play up a character. But, I saw some bad interactions with kick streamers with a couple of Twitch folks. And it's just like, why are you going to somebody else's show and then acting a fool? Right? Because, like, we talked about it out there. It's like when I had my shop, if I went to somebody else's store and been like, man, y'all want to know what a better store is? Like,
Yeah.
you just don't roam into somebody
Or
else's
you'll
thing.
see people go into Twitch streams and try to promote their own stream or their own content. Like, no, it's bad form. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's just weird. Like, like, who are the fans or the viewers you expect to get from that? Right? More bad actors or people who only find that entertaining? Because those probably aren't the people you want following you or that
Well,
are going to
Kick,
be. You're right. Maybe on
Kick's
Kick,
whole
that's what they're
brand,
looking
sadly,
for.
is becoming, Twitch only it's for a-holes. Really is what Kick is turning into.
Apparently, I mean, I don't.
Like if you scammed your community out of money, saying you needed medical help, and it turns out you had a gambling addiction, Kick will have you. If you crash other people's streams and pretend and act like an idiot, apparently Kick will have you. If you platform Nazis, Kick is like, come on in.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I was like,
I'm
now
sure
don't get me
Dr.
wrong,
Disrespect will be showing up on Kick real soon. He
probably
fits the
so.
brand at this point.
Now I'm sure if you'd have been outside and been like had your little pamphlets or some business card to promote your stuff, okay, that's one thing. We see it all the time at Comic Cons and whatever. People outside the show trying to do some business, whatever. I get it. You're trying to hustle, but to go into an actual other show, repping the other brands and disrupting the work that other people are doing, like that, there's just no space for that, man. Like seriously, hell, if nothing else, you have to know that other sponsors and brands or whatever are going to see that.
I mean,
because they're probably sponsors or followers, supporters of the people you're interrupting.
yeah.
So those are now other brands you're less likely to get because they've seen your behavior and see your level of unprofessionalism. So like I just don't get it. And on some level, it's immaturity. I get it. The people acting a fool are often under like 25 or like fine. But dude, you got to have some common sense. When you get into all this, you're a business now. You
Right.
might be a business of one till you get you some editors and some script writers or whatever, but you're a business now and you got to start acting like it because that's just silly. But that being said, if that's who you got on your platform over on Kick, then those are the people that are there. There's no reason at this point for us to think it's anything different from every single story that we see. So, is what it is. It's just frustrating to see, is all because we always want other options. We want other things to support, but right now, I just don't have enough things that I could even say positive about Kick and support. It's just more nonsense all the time. But anyway, why don't you tell us what you got?
Yeah, poor Assassin's Creed Shadows. I mean, they have been, they've been catching hell all year. First from, racist idiots that were concerned about whether Yasuke was a black samurai, as if anybody has ever questioned the historical accuracy of any Assassin's Creed character before. This is literally a game in which aliens exist and the Assassin's Creed people use their technology. A game in which you can plug your head into a computer and suddenly unlock all the skills your ancestors ever had. Now, all of a sudden, people are sticklers for accuracy. But apparently, Assassin's Creed Shadows is going to get pushed all the way back to February. And for a game that up to this point has been kind of almost like Madden, where it drops on an annual basis, this is probably going to be a really just a really bad setback. I think their Ubisoft stock already was down by about 5 or 6% last time I saw it. Because again, though you're trying to hit benchmarks, you count on Assassin's Creed to drop every October/November and generate X amount of revenue. That's not happening. Not like you got some other game to put in that window, because Assassin's Creed is a brand that's been built up for 15, 16 years at this point. So yeah, Ubisoft's going to take, especially in the short term, they're going to take some pretty big hits on this. So it's, and then of course for Magic, we had an Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond product. This is, I guess, one of the things you can't predict. When a game that, again, up until this point has dropped an annual release probably every year for at least 9 or 10 years, there's just no way to foresee that. Oh, you know what, Assassin's Creed ain't coming out this year, because again, it's been like Madden, like NBA, WWE, or pretty much any other game that releases on a essentially annual basis. So Wizards had no way to know it was going to happen, but it's happened. I guess that's just one of the unforeseen dangers of attaching yourself to somebody else's product that you wouldn't have thought about it, because especially in the case of this franchise, it has, to my knowledge, never happened before.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, even with their own things, where it was trying to line up a D&D movie, a card set, a video game. Couldn't even when you had your hand in all three licenses or where it was going to land, like, you couldn't even get them to line up because of things outside of your control, you know? And when you're working with the whole other brand, something like this happens, like, everything's off kilter. And for Ubisoft, this is a little tough, because now, let's say it does release in February, March next year. Now all your stuff is off cycle.
Yeah,
Right?
because the reason games drop in October/November is for the Christmas rush.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of people get new games for, especially as a kid, when we weren't doing so well and literally couldn't afford a lot of the hobbies I was trying to get into. I got a new game on my birthday. I got a new game on Christmas. Those were the only two new video games I was getting all year. So if you want something for Christmas, and then your favorite game just doesn't come out, how you handle this? Like, do you wait until your next birthday?
Yeah.
I know as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, no, I'm getting some other video game. I got a request in. I'm getting something else, and I just might not get to play Assassin's Creed if it comes out in February.
Well,
Especially in
also,
my case, my birthday was in November. My Christmas, obviously, in December. My two games came right back to back, and that was it until next year.
I would also say, though, like, the company has learned how to promote around that time period, around that release, right? Now everything has to be reevaluated. You have to look at analytics all over again, whatever, for how to even promote and market and what you do at that time of year. Like, are you going to try to get on a Super Bowl commercial now?
Yeah,
Like, you
and
know what I mean? Like,
those ain't cheap, by the way.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what do you do, right? So, and then, are you going to try to still release a game in February, March, and release one in September, October in the same year, right? So now is everything going to shift to a spring's release, right? Like, so there's a lot of questions that happen with this. This is why companies try to stay on cycle, because when you get off cycle, like, the business gets disrupted. So yeah, I'm with you. This could be a rough time for Ubisoft, because this is kind of like their banner title, like we talked
It
about. Like,
really is, yeah.
their Assassin's Creed has basically become one of those legacy titles.
Yeah, I mean, Assassin's Creed is like their Mario, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
With the difference being Nintendo usually waits 2 or 3 years between theirs because they can afford to. Plus
Well,
they
yeah, but
got,
they can also put other Mario stuff in between. You can get a Mario
yeah,
Party, you can get Mario Kart, like
right.
you got other things. So yeah, it's a tough one, man. I don't know how this is gonna set for them, but
I'll be amazed if Shadows does. I guess at the end of the day, if it turns out to be an incredible game, well, I can't even say that because how many games have we seen recently get great reviews that just end up dying because, in some cases, games that have won, like Rumbleverse, for example, I think won fighting game of the year from a couple of people, still didn't hit the numbers that Epic needed to hit. And again, if you're comparing everything to Fortnite, ain't nobody gonna hit those numbers,
dude,
sadly.
we've been saying this for the better part of 2 years. Like we've gone, this is now going to be like the third consecutive year of just hitters, right? All year long, video games of every genre, every console, PC, whatever. If you aren't a banger or you miss your opportunity, your window, like that could just be the death of a license or a product right now. Because you and I both, we have a list of games we still want to play. We know we're never going to get to them,
Yeah,
and they're
it's to
good
that point.
games,
Yeah.
right? So like when something new comes out, we're like, well, hell, I still got this backlog I ain't even touched yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a new
You know?
Dragon Age dropping this year, so it's just, it's. I
Yeah,
still haven't gotten around to playing Baldur's Gate. I know I want to. It's just, especially with content responsibilities, where I pretty much have to play almost every sports game that comes down the pike, or at least know enough about it to where I can write about it and talk about it intelligently. So it just
hell,
that's one of the things I try to do, like on weekends and on vacation time periods, is actually play something just for fun, something that I'm never going to write about or make a video about. And it's even that is hard. It's something interesting happens. Well, dang it, now I'm probably writing about it.
hell, I've got one Baldur's Gate campaign I play roughly every Tuesday evening with a couple people, and we get in for 2 hours. I'm 100 hours into that thing, and that's the only time I get to play it.
Great.
Right. And I don't have room for anything else. Like hell, right now, just recently, I was talking with Shivam and a couple of creators about playing Civ 7 when that comes out. And that's mostly so we could just do a big multi-stream for like 8 hours
That
and
does
just
look
do a
really
giant
good.
game of Civ. But otherwise, I probably wouldn't even be downloading that.
And
And
for
it's
anybody who hasn't heard, their big thing this year is, in previous years, it's been like, okay, if you pick Benjamin Franklin, you're going to be America. You pick, Montezuma, you're the Aztecs. No, it's Civ 7. You're able to play apparently any leader with any civilization. So, hey, if you want, some American Aztecs, you can do that.
yeah, it's gonna be a crazy time. It's gonna be a crazy but again, that might be the only long extended game period I have of that game. I'll literally be purchasing it for a business reason to do it for one day, one full day, and that'll probably be it. And then I probably won't play another new release game for 6 months, probably, which is crazy. But that's just embarrassment of riches as a nerd right now. Like, doesn't matter if you play in paper, if you play board games, if you play video games, mobile games, there's good stuff at every level. Like,
Right.
we've just reached that point, which is
I'm working two screens, y'all, in case anybody watching the video is wondering why I'm over here and I got the super villain set up.
it's all right. I'll probably have something on screen to tell people, but if mine's choppy, it's just because we have an issue connecting to our service right now, and I haven't been able to fix it. But the audio should still be good, so it is what it is. But let's get into stuff that we learned this week, because honestly, we have a couple of interesting things that I don't know if people are aware of. So let's see if we can impress people this week.
Yeah, a versus system, which for anybody that doesn't know, that's Upper Deck's card game that includes everything from superheroes to wild twist AEW wrestlers. But in any case, they have announced they're going to end organized play. They didn't say specifically that this is happening, but I suspect because one of their licenses is the Marvel Comics license. As we all know, Marvel is going to be coming out on Magic cards really soon. I think Marvel is just kind of locking up the number of people that have their licenses, and while Versus has several licenses, I think we'd all agree that Marvel is the biggest thing that they had in their kit. So without that, I guess organized play is probably not going to be financially viable. So that happened. Again, not a huge shock. We talked about when we heard they're going to be Marvel cards, and man, it seems like Marvel's licenses in a lot of places. This is interesting. And now, as we see, this is again not confirmed, but I fully suspect that's what's going to end up happening here.
Yeah. And I kind of feel bad for Upper Deck and the Versus System team because they had such a bad start from the beginning with the first go round because they made the game overly strategic. If you weren't just a top level strategist of a gamer, you couldn't really enjoy it. And then they revamped it. I mean, it was basically gone for what, 6 years, 7 years, and they revamped it and it came back. And when it did, the new version is actually pretty solid. The problem though is you have all that bad history under it, and it's just, man, just one of those cases where trusting super advanced players got them in trouble because they didn't understand that's not what the casual player wants, and that's not what's going to sell your game. Then you get into the situation where you built a better version of it. I honestly believe it is, but it's just
Definitely.
hard to get people to play it at this stage. So kind of feels like it was a long time coming. And I think you're right. At some point, they can't have a bunch of card game products out with the Marvel license because one, it's mixed up branding anyway.
Yeah.
You don't want different card promos showing up in your like Gen Con swag bag or whatever for multiple games.
Yeah, you
It's
don't
just
want
weird.
somebody going in a comic book store thinking they're buying the magic cards in it with Versus System and getting extremely upset by that, which is a
Yeah.
thing that honestly, especially for people that are, and with the Marvel product, you're expecting to attract people who may be just getting into the hobby. So that's the thing that could easily happen.
Yeah. And I also think it's a bigger issue too, because if I'm not mistaken, the Marvel system or the Versus System game is also the comic book license, which is exactly what Magic has. So it'd be one thing if they were like the live action and the other, the Marvel Studios or whatever, and the other was Marvel Comics, then like probably. But the fact that they're both Marvel Comics license probably means only one can exist. So it makes sense. And you got a multi-year deal already locked up with Magic because they've already said, I think they said they're going to do 3 different sets worth.
And
So
we all know what Magic sets they're going to make. That'll be that's going to do probably more than Lord of the Rings money, which is crazy to say out loud. But yeah, I mean, I think we all know that Marvel is while Lord of the Rings is great, Marvel is more popular. So yeah, it's going to be
oh yeah, I don't think it would be
wild
unreal to
numbers.
say even just one Magic release of the Marvel comic set probably does more than the last like 5 year of sales of Versus System with Marvel
Oh, I
stuff in
wouldn't
it.
doubt it because Magic is number one in the CCG space. Versus, I'm gonna guess maybe top 10. I wouldn't be
Probably
able to
that's probably
swear to
about
it.
right if you're on the
Yeah.
bottom of the top 10 maybe. So yeah, it's tough.
As
It's
we've
tough.
talked about, if you're, with the top three on that list pretty much doesn't move and hadn't
Yeah.
moved for 30 years almost,
And I will
it's
admit
hard to
like
get in.
I've met people Upper Deck that have worked on multiple projects there. Great people. Some of them have since moved on to other projects, like good folks there. So I'm really hoping they find something else. Or, hopefully too many of them don't get released from their projects, which sadly they probably will since you're losing one of the biggest license for that. But just kind of the way things have gone, and Magic's an ever rolling behemoth at this point. I mean, I don't think it's going away. And as long as they're getting licensing deals, only more people are going to come and make deals with them, I'd imagine. The money's too good. All right. I went down a rabbit hole recently, yesterday actually, and I don't even know. Like this is one of those cases where like I like to read articles, and then if something's hyperlinked, I'll right click it and then pop it open so I can read that tab when I'm done. Somewhere along the way, I got about 6 tabs deep, so I don't even know where it originated. But I came
It's the name of my
across
cover band, Six Tabs Deep.
exactly. I came across this group called the Silver Snipers, and they apparently are a CS:GO team where the youngest member is, I believe, now 63 years old, with the oldest member being either 83 or 84 years old. And
That's
not only
awesome.
that, they have actually won a tournament at a DreamHack before, apparently. So, like, they're legit, but they're all senior citizens that play first person shooters, and they have a full on Lenovo sponsorship.
Which
Like,
in
they got,
theory, shooters are in theory, the most reflex responsive, where you figure by the time you're even 26, you think you're probably done.
oh, yeah. So the fact that these people are literally 40 years older than probably the oldest competitor they go up against at any event is wild. But Lenovo went all out. They got like the cool team shot, they've got like matching hoodies. they've got all their stats on the page with like their age, their kill ratios, like their win percentages. Like these are legit gamers. It's not like they're just, oh, hey, it's cute that we have these old people out here gaming. Like they're for real getting it done. Like, put some respect on their name, man. Like they're for real
They got a couple
working.
of ladies on the team too, which is awesome.
Yeah, like they're doing it. They got full social media stuff. Like I felt bad because I'm like, how did we never hear about these people?
Right?
Right? Like, and I get
And
it.
we are crispier gamers, so you think we would
Yeah.
know. I'm like, oh, can I join? Like, I'm not old enough to join
Yeah, I'm
yet,
not
which
even
is
there. I'm 45. I ain't even there yet. So
something
shoot.
I would never figure I'd be able to say about a gaming team.
The crazy thing is, like, this to me feels like it should have been a big story.
Right.
Right? But we don't celebrate this type of, we always got to talk about controversy and this person having a loud character or whatever. And it's like, man, these are people showing you that, like, hey, there is a way that you could get involved in this, and you don't have to be 20 years old. And
Right.
like, hell, they probably all have grandkids and families or whatever,
Right.
but yet they're still able to get out here and game. So shoot, if I get a chance, I'm going to try to reach out to them because I'd love to interview one of them just to know, like,
Right.
how did this even come about? Like, how do you find 4 or 5 other gamers that are senior in age that are also good at the game you like to play? You know what I mean? Like, that's a weird cross section. Like, that Venn
Yeah.
diagram has to be a real slim crossover. You know what I
You would
mean?
think so.
But it works. So, like, credit to them. And the stories I could find on them, they were quoted, some of them as saying, like, they feel like it keeps them mentally sharp. It keeps them from developing issues with their hands because they're using them more often. Like, just lots of little health issues that they feel it's helped fend things off, to where some of them said they feel, 20 and 30 years younger than their age compared to other
That is
people their
great.
age. So all good stuff, man. I just don't know how I'd never heard about it. Like, and I'm sure if you were in the CSGO community, you probably already know about this. You probably at least heard about them on some level. I just don't know how I missed it. I feel bad that I missed these people in this
Right.
story because they deserve more respect than they've gotten. So yeah, if you don't know about them, there you go. Go check out some Silver Snipers because they look like genuinely wholesome people. They
Right.
just are gonna kick your ass if they run into you at CS:GO. That's all. Oh man! All right, let's get into a couple of quick topics here. All right, so we got to rewind like 3-4 weeks ago, where we brought it up on the show. That was a little weird that the Brandon Ruth stuff popped up again about the Magic animated series being canceled, because we knew all the stuff with Gideon was already basically, as far as I'm concerned, was dead and buried. We knew the Russo brothers weren't part of it anymore, but that seemed to be all people were talking about in those interviews, to the point that I thought it was an old interview. But apparently somebody ran into Brandon Ruth recently, and then that story took off again for some reason. Well, this past week we had a thing posted from Netflix saying, like, hey, the Magic animated series is still on and it has a new showrunner. And it was like, okay. So I don't know why this is particular out. Maybe because that Brandon Ruth stuff came out and
That's what
they
I'm
don't.
thinking. I doubt they say anything unless he said something, because the other things they showed, like Arcane has already a release date for season 2. I think it's part of Netflix has their thing called Geeked Week, where they specifically talk about all the sci-fi, fantasy,
Mhm.
those kind of projects, which is why they mentioned Arcane and some of those things. So all those things seem way farther along than where the Magic thing is. I feel like they just mentioned this because of the Brown and Routh interview.
Yeah, I'm assuming this isn't, we're not going to see this for the end of 2025 at this point. If we do, it'll be toward the back end of 2025.
And in the entertainment industry, just because something hasn't been canceled yet, especially an animated series, doesn't mean it won't be at some point in the future. It's just, as of right now, according to Netflix, still on.
Now, I will say this, compared to the last time where it had a bunch of things where we're like, well, this sounds good, but I don't know how this is going to line up. This time, the imagery is clearly of what appears to be Chandra and Ajani. So I'm like, all right, cool. Characters that people like, fan favorites, known planeswalkers, still alive. That's a big selling point. But then they have a showrunner, Terry Matalas. And that name, I had to go look it up because I remember it being familiar. But this person has also worked on Picard, which to me feels like a big thing because one, we all know the Star Trek fan base is very large, very passionate, but you're having to write stories that kind of expand on that and go in a slightly different direction with the character kind of after everything else. So that makes a lot of sense, right? You're getting somebody who already knows how to deal with a very passionate fan base that already has a long history, but you're writing new stories. Additionally, Picard was also only available on a streaming service. So you're also working with somebody who knows how to handle that relationship as well. So those things already sit pretty well saying, hey, you've picked somebody who knows how to handle this, understands how to work with the popular brand, understands how to work with streaming services, knows how to give a decent amount of fan service to keep the fans happy, because that's important. So, you know what? I at least feel like this has more of a shot. Like before, we had some big names attached to it, and the names were exciting, but when you dive into it, it's like, okay, but how's this relationship going to work? At least this time, it's like not the biggest names, but the history there that feels like this could work out. I don't know how you feel about it.
Um, I mean, remembering some of the reviews I read about Picard, they're kind of, I think it improved as it went on from everything that I've heard. So, again, because when you talk about the Russos, you're comparing everything to Endgame, which is probably the best comic book thing that's ever been done. So nobody's going to be able to compare to that probably. So, but I mean, I'm hoping it works. Is the thing. I want this thing to somehow happen because we've seen how the D&D movie was able to come off. We've seen again also on Netflix, Arcane, and how incredibly well it was done. Magic's characters, I believe, can absolutely carry a project like this.
Yeah.
Fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I'm still of the mindset. I mean, obviously, if it is a Marvel, Arcane, whatever, fantastic. I'm like, obviously,
Right.
that's the goal. But I honestly think as long as it's not bad, it's still no. I mean,
as long as it's not bad.
No. But hear me out. I think as a marketing tool, you just need it to not be bad, right? Because if it's bad, you wreck any opportunity for future branding. Like you're not going to get re-up with Netflix. Like you kill so many opportunities.
Well,
But you
with
need it.
Magic, you shouldn't though. That's been my whole. What am I complaining to last? Like, if you make a bad Marvel movie, and Lord knows they have, nobody goes, "Oh, we're not going to make any more Marvel movies because the brand is too big and
But
too
I would
important."
argue that if that first couple of like Iron Man, Captain America have been bad, we ain't getting the rest of that whole generation of stuff.
No, but somebody else would still eventually try it again.
Oh, sure, way down the road. And to be fair, that happened with Marvel.
This
Remember,
is
we
iteration like
had bad Punisher,
Fantastic
we had
Four.
bad Captain America. Like
Yeah,
it was
this is
years before we even tried anything else.
This is the fifth or sixth iteration of somebody trying to make a Marvel cinematic universe.
Hell,
So
we had a couple of bad Hulk movies to where people went, I don't know about Iron Man, y'all. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, people were almost checked out because of those two Hulk movies. So I feel you.
I feel like we had one bad one and one that just didn't make any money. I didn't think Edward Norton was bad as the Hulk.
No, but
I think it just
the
nobody
movie
liked it.
itself wasn't great.
I don't think it was bad. I
actually liked the first actor as Bruce, Eric Bana, I think it was.
Yeah,
I liked him better as Bruce Banner, but the movie he was in was terrible.
It sounded like everybody liked. That's part. I think what happened with Hulk is just nobody, for what I understand, I've not heard one person that was on that movie that enjoyed working with Edward Norton. It sounds like what happened there.
Yeah, it was just bad. But yeah, I see your point though. You are right. Eventually, somebody would probably try it again. But I think realistically, as long as you don't do anything crazy, it's going to be hard for it not to at least be mediocre. I feel like at this point, like following the characters, the stories, there's enough already given to you there with just all the background, anything you want to take from the cards as far as artwork and flavor text that you want to turn into something. Visually, we have literal full style guides and world guides that already exist, which is great if you're working on this type of stuff as an artist, because Wizards can literally just go, here's a handbook for Zendikar, here's a handbook for Kaladesh, here, wherever you decide to set the episodes, like you have more visual references and anything than like you literally, they have the same thing available you would have got if you went to work on like Lord of the Rings, as far as like what the outfits and the weapons and whatever look like. That's all mapped out for every single Magic world. So the artist can literally just dive right in, which is great.
And since we're on here, I also got to ask, I hope there are going to be some people of color involved. Because again, Johnny's a cat, and Chandra we thought was white until Kaladesh came out. So as we discussed on the podcast with Shiva, so hopefully at some point there will be some characters of color mentioned in this project.
Yeah, probably. I mean, probably going to be Teferi. Like, just
Which I'm
your,
cool with. I
yeah,
got no
probably.
problem with it. But again, I would like him to be in the marketing material if he's going to be an important character, and I would hope he would be an important character. It's the same problem we had, with the first incarnation of the Gatewatch, where the only character of color was Gideon, and most of us didn't know Gideon was Greek until
Well,
the
they
Darrow
they
set
kind
came
of
out.
they kind of shifted Gideon over the years a couple times till we
Right?
landed on something that worked.
Yeah.
So
But
but yeah, it's cool though to see that this is back on. It sounds like you have a reasonable showrunner and direction. So I don't think we'll see an update on this probably for the better part of 4 to 6 months at least. And like I said, I wouldn't be expecting to see it before the end of 2025, if not early 2026, since this is all we've heard about it at this point.
yeah, but especially it being animated, that takes forever.
Yeah. But
So if
again,
they're just now starting, it could easily be 3 years.
yeah, I will say again, the benefit for the crew of artists is that a lot of the concept work for things has already been done, and that saves a lot of time. Now, I don't. It's still going to take a long time to produce, but referencing everything and making stuff look the same and approval and whatever, like that's going to be a lot smoother than on other projects, I'm sure. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because the Brandon Ruth came in thing and everybody treated it like that's it, that's the death of it, we're never getting it, and then you know Geek Week happens and they're like, hey, guess what we got, guys? So here we are. Now we get to follow that with some sadly unfortunate news. It looks like we have some more releases happening for writers in the game industry, particularly TCG Player. Uh, Cassie Celeste actually posted that they're being released from TCG Player from writing their articles, which I believe they wrote there for, gosh, forever. I can't remember a time where their stuff wasn't posted there. But we're just kind of moving to the world where, a lot of these, especially Magic sites and card game sites, are only keeping a handful of writers, and a lot of it's going to visual media. People making stuff for their social medias, or even making videos that just get posted on the homepages of a lot of these different sites. And I've said it before, I think there's still room for both. I think there's a reason for both. I think even if you do a video, having it transcribed for people who maybe can't listen to it for a various reason or want to read through it for various reasons, I think could still be positive. But this has kind of been a trend at this point. We're seeing it across all
Right.
types of websites. So kind of sucks. And you're fortunately just got a writing gig recently. So like,
So yeah, fingers crossed. Nothing is
yeah,
happening over there.
but I think it's a thing where, right, like the site has to be geared to take advantage of the written articles as well. And I don't know if that many Magic websites really were, except for being able to link cards in the articles so they could sell more cards on the site, right? You know,
Excuse me.
and that makes sense. It's a decent business model, especially in a world where now we're starting to get back to more big tournaments where people are going to be posting tournament reports and posting their deck lists and whatever, or decks they tested, and then you'll have the list there. You can click the list, boom, you can just buy the deck and they'll mail it to you, right? That's kind of when they made their money. When you're not in that space, though, it's harder to justify the articles. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one. And you mentioned that the gamers group's also letting some other people go.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess currently breaking, so I don't have a whole lot of names yet as to who's being let go, but there's enough leaking out that it sounds like they own I believe Destructoid, Silicon, several gaming sites. I think they own the Mary Sue also. So it's one of those things where they went on a big buying and spending spree, and I guess it really didn't kind of work out the way they wanted to. So which unfortunately we see that happen a lot in every industry where people have big plans and then things don't work out. And of course, it's the employees who usually get punished when that happens.
I mean, hell, YouTube's getting a lot of that ad revenue. I mean,
Yeah.
like, just kind of is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of people making a lot of money on YouTube because the ads are rolling over there. But yeah, this is something I think we're going to keep hearing, you know, until we see the slowdown finally. It gets to an equilibrium and then slowly maybe a couple more going the other way. But we've also seen too when people buy a lot of websites or services at one time, usually not good for the employees often. I mean, just people just get
Because
let
you
go
so
along
many
the way.
times end up kind of duplicating things. Because you let's say you buy a site that covered a bunch of RPGs, they have a Final Fantasy writer, and then you buy another site that covers RPGs, and lo and behold, they have a Final Fantasy writer, and you end up deciding you don't need two of them.
Yeah. Especially if you already feel one of them's better or you have a longer relationship with one or whatever, kind of sucks for the other person. You weren't part of the mothership that bought the other thing, so you're out, unfortunately. Like, that's always tough.
The other person may be more favored by the video game company also. Maybe they've
Oh,
never
true.
they may have never given Final Fantasy a bad review. Whereas the other person, that's the thing that happens, where we've seen, like, even with the big sites where people just, even sites like Kotaku or IGN, if they don't necessarily like a game, the publisher tries to freeze them out. Now, obviously, a site that big, they're almost impossible to freeze out because, okay, they didn't need the free copy. Their company could afford to go buy somebody a copy. Now, if a smaller site gets frozen out, yeah, literally, you might not be able to afford to buy the game copy yourself. That's the thing that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a tough situation, man. Making content about other products regularly, you have to ride a fine line. When you're reviewing stuff or talking about a new thing, because you got to be honest, but you also don't want to burn bridges. So you got to be careful how you word some things, or that may not end
I
up
mean, the
well for you in
journalism,
the
the
future.
primary thing is, to be honest, burning bridges is
Yeah,
supposed to be somewhere near the bottom because obviously, if, let's say, let's just throw the Blizzard example out there. If somebody is going around the company, sexually harassing people, you got to burn them. You
yeah.
can't you can't coddle them. The news must be broken. But yeah, if they're ever in a position to get you hired, they're obviously not going to.
Oh, of
But
course.
but journalistically, the correct thing to do was to set fire to that bridge.
Yep. But yeah, I just want to say, hope those writers all land on some other gig or find something else they like to do. Because man, it sucks when you have a thing you enjoy that you've done for that long that's paid your bills, and now you just don't get to do it. But let's go ahead and hop into the dinner table here. Um, this was an interesting question that was posed, and it's basically with all the fuss around the prices from the bannings. How much do we think the cost of decks affect people playing the game, or a game for that matter? And I kind of get it because on the one hand, you say, well, if things are so expensive, then people don't buy them, they can't play the game, whatever. But if people are that upset because they all bought and owned these things or acquired them on some level, traded, whatever, then the price wasn't really a restriction and people still were playing the game. Which
Well, I
I
mean,
didn't
it
really,
still could be because, like you've talked about, you have people trying to play a Magic tournament to spend their last $5. Now, you'll tell them not to. Not
yeah,
every store owner is going to do that.
true. I
There
mean, and
are
it's,
cases where people, spend way more money than what they could afford to spend on the hobby, and then bam, something like this happens, and
oh,
they're out
yeah,
all of it.
I don't know if it stops anyone. I mean, they just make some bad decisions to keep playing when they may not be able to put it in their budget comfortably. Because I mean, I've seen that with God. I'm trying to think all the games I've seen that with, but definitely saw some of that with Raw Deal when we played. People were trying to travel to tournaments I knew they couldn't afford to ride with us and go to. I've definitely seen it with Warhammer because my God, I had to stop some people putting some Warhammer on credit cards.
Does Warhammer even have any kind of competitive thing where you can get
they
your
they
money
do
back?
have
I don't even know.
tournaments
Okay.
and they have like some big things like Gen Con and stuff, but I don't know if I'd call it like a pro circuit, where you can
Yeah, so
rarely
nothing
win a
where
bunch
you're
of
going to
money or
make a
whatever.
living playing Warhammer. I didn't
No,
think I'd heard about anything like that.
no. Yeah, it kind of exists in a lot of hobbies. You know, I do think at the very basic level, there should always be a cheap entry level to a thing. Under $40, realistically, preferably under $25. But then it's like, okay, if people do like it, where do they go from there?
Yeah, because if you bring your $25 Commander deck to a group that's been playing for 20 years, you're not winning anything, right? In
Now,
all
I will say
likelihood.
this: sometime after maybe Strixhaven, maybe a year after that. But like they started making commander decks that were much better than they used to be. Like they're way more cohesive now. The cards all
Okay.
do big things. So you can sit down and at least be competitive. You may not win as many, but you're at least going to be competitive, still occasionally win some with a $35, $40 deck, right? And that's good. So I mean, I guess that helps people experience the game and that's fine. So, I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deterrent, but comparatively, I do think there's a perception issue because what stopped a lot of people from playing Flesh and Blood for a while was that you saw all these, I can't remember what they call their like super rare cards, but those were posted on a lot of sites and people are like, there's $500 cards, there's $700 cards. This game's only a couple years old. Like, I'm not going to play this or buy this, you know? So even though there were like $5 versions of the same cards, like people didn't even want to give it a look because the perception was, oh, this was too expensive. Like, I'm not even getting into this. So there is a mental blocker there. If that gets to be known to be the thing that you have a bunch of chase cards or whatever, and in some cases, some of those cards only had rare versions or mythic rare versions, I guess would be the equivalent that were kind of pricey. So there wasn't a cheap option, and that
And I
that
mean,
was a
I don't
little
know
tough.
what is their pro situation. Can you make a living playing Flesh and Blood?
I would say you could at least make a modest living.
Okay.
You know, they have their pro tour, they have some like regional tournaments or like uh Grand Prix kind of equivalent things. So those do exist where you can win some prize money and stuff, and they're doing a decent job with it. But yeah, it's tough. It's a weird conversation, you know, because I've mentioned it before, right? Players want stuff to be cheap, whatever the game is, when they want to acquire something, but then they also want there to be value when it comes time to sell or trade something. And you can't really have both of those things. So generally, you're going to be better off with things being slightly more expensive because then when somebody acquires something, they at least have an asset. You know, now I'm not saying you should go invest in modern day cardboard because prices are going to fluctuate and reprints and whatever, you know, it's a whole thing. But at least you have something there versus if it's all just $1 and $2 things. Okay, now you have a thing, but it's kind of mostly worthless, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting thought. I don't really know, you know, how much I think that plays a part because there was a point even when I had my shop, I probably would have said things being pricey are a big deterrent, but seeing the behavior of people over the years and how they go to purchase and acquire things and how they prioritize what they want to spend money on, it isn't that much of a deterrent. We've seen even in video games. I thought when video games started getting to $60, that might slow down sales. If people just buy just as many as they bought before, you know. And I was like,
Which, I mean, if you think about it, as far as I'm concerned, it's some of the best value because, okay, $60, let's say you go spend, and if you take, let's say, four people to a movie, $60 is not an unreasonable expense. If you eat there, good Lord, it's $100. As opposed to a video game, so you get something like Baldur's Gate, you're going to get 200 hours of entertainment out of that. Where else can you get 200 hours of entertainment? There's not very many places.
oh, I've said that for a long time, right? Like, but there seems to be a publicly acceptable expense at a movie theater, right? People will look at a $50 board game that they're going to play 10 times with their family and be like, I don't know, $50 is a lot for a board game, whatever. But then that same family, like I said, I'll go to the next big movie, drop $80 and not even think twice about it. And they're done in 2 hours, you know, but
That's
we've
assuming the movie was good, and they're not all good.
well, yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like we've kind of just decided how we want to spend our money. You know, like I've said it before, you know, people will look at that $40 magic deck and be like, ugh, who's gonna spend $40 on a magic deck? And then turn around and spend $50 on, you know, a new piece of their Warhammer army, you know, or a $40 D&D book or whatever.
Right.
Everybody looks at the other thing as being too expensive. You know, Magic players look at Pokemon cards and go like, oh, who's buying that? Whatever. But Pokemon players look at the Yu-Gi-Oh players and be like, why are you buying a $30 structure deck or whatever it is? So we all kind of just prioritize how we're going to do our spending. I think it's for me, it's what like how much like you said, how much entertainment can you get out of that per dollar? You know, hours per dollar of entertainment. And in a lot of cases, if you're because like I've said it before, it's weird for me to see people complain about somebody spending even $20 on their favorite mobile game or on Magic Arena or whatever. but then they'll brag about spending $60 on a video game and then they beat it in 20 hours. And I'm like, well, I'd have rather spent my $60 on something else if I'm gonna be done with it in like 2 or 3 days of playing.
Or
You
good
know, like,
lord, if it's any kind of sports game and you're into the ultimate team mode, then okay, yeah, you've paid 70 for the game, but if you want to actually go online and contend, you might need to drop either another $50 or $60 or 50 or 60 hours to get
yep.
your team where you go online and not get completely curb stomped.
But again, I think some people look at that and go, I'm not gonna spend $120 on that. But somebody else who spends $120, but they play that game for 6 months, a couple hours a night, they got way more than their money's worth out of their $120. So, like, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to really say. It's really down to the individual. It's like, what do you value and what type of entertainment are you looking for? Because even for myself, there's some games I'll gladly spend on, and there's others that I'm like, I'll just do the slow grind. And if I get stuff, I get stuff. If I don't, I don't. Right.
NBA 2K25, I usually wait until Christmas because by Christmas, oftentimes it's, 20 or $30. But because this year I was writing for GameSided and needed to kind of keep up what was going on with that, I bought it at launch. And I'm so glad I did because it's incredible this year. And I'd have missed a lot of, because as you know, especially with the Ultimate Team thing, each week they're dropping a new card that's incrementally
Mm-hmm.
better than the last card. Had I waited till December, yeah, I'd have missed a whole lot of play experiences.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I probably didn't give a clean answer for what they wanted, but I think it's so individualistic. I don't know
Yeah.
if I have just how much do I feel it? Because literally, I've seen it from every angle now. I've watched people buy stuff when I was at Card Kingdom. I've been on the side of making the stuff for people looking at feedback at Wizards. I've been at the retail level selling it. I've been a player on the other side of it. And I don't think there is one right answer.
It definitely stops some people, like you said, but then that's there are people that feel either feel they can afford it or just go and spend the money anyway, even if maybe they can't afford it. So it really is. I guess the basic rule of economics is what is anything worth? What someone is willing to pay for it.
Yeah, at the end of the day. Well, all right, dude. Why don't everybody they can find you on the social media machines?
Right. I am Brian Sonic on Twitter, YouTube. I write over at GameSided, so by all means, stop over there. And if you like the video gaming type stuff,
And you can find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn. There is tons of Duskmorn stuff on my channel if you want to come check that out. And if you are going to be at MagicCon Vegas, as of now, I'm still planning to be there. So stop by and say hi. But as always, wherever you're watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome. And most importantly, be awesome to each other.